They say some places forget themselves. One morning, a whole village decided to do just that. Houses stood where houses had been the night before, and then they were gone. No ruin, no ash, no footprints leading away. Not a single living soul. Only silence, and the kind of emptiness that makes the air taste wrong. If you think of vanished towns as legends, keep your disbelief, because what I'm about to tell you is built from the quiet that followed the last known laugh in that village. The place was small, cut off by crooked lanes and a river that liked to hide in fog. Locals called it Mirah's Hollow, a handful of clay and timber homes, a single dusty square, lanterns that burned low at night, and a bell the size of a small moon that rang only for weddings and funerals. Its people lived ordinary lives, a rooster that crowed at dawn, women who braided hair on porches, men who mended nets and told the same jokes until they were worn thin. Nothing about Mirah's Hollow prepared anyone for the morning that all became empty. It started with a traveler, a man whose memory of the road was sloppy with drink and sleep. He came down the lane planning to spend the night at the inn, find warmth and a bowl of stew. The road opened into the village square, and he expected the small chaos of ordinary life, but saw only the hollow of absence. Bowls still on tables, steam no longer rising. A child's wooden horse propped against a doorway, as if someone had left mid-play. A woman's shawl thrown over a chair, its shape like a missing body. Dogs lay curled in the corners of yards, their eyes glazed and unseeing, as if sleep had no intention of ending. The traveler walked into empty rooms, called names that had once been common there, and heard nothing but the bell of the wind passing through. The innkeeper's door stood open, the ledger on the desk still splayed to the last entry, the ink dry. He found the bell ropes still warm under his hand, as if they had been wrung only hours before. He ran to the river, then to the farmhouse, then to the bell tower itself. But there were no tracks in the mud, no cart's marks, no footprints on the soft earth. Even the smoke that normally threaded the morning from chimneys had been cut clean. It was as if the village had been edited out of the world. When the traveler reached the nearest town and told them, people assumed a prank, or worse, a tale dressed by rum. A search party went with lanterns and curses. They found a ring of crops, the bones of fence posts, a path of stones that stopped mid-journey, and nothing else. Dogs refused to cross the threshold where the village had been. Birds flew in circles over the empty patch of ground, like something metallized into the sky. The most experienced trackers, men who could read winter in a footprint, swore they felt a tug at the edge of reason, that whatever had happened here had left nothing for their skills to find. Rumors are human attempts to stitch together a wound. 3 days after the disappearance, the first theory arrived. Plague, an invisible sickness that took everyone in a night and left no bodies to shame those who survived. It sounded sensible until the town gravediggers, after a long, fevered search, found nothing to bury. No fever, no marks, no smell. Then came the stories about an enemy raid, a band of men who took everyone away in chains. But the fields were still trampled in the same direction as the cows' hooves had always gone. Peaceful. And the neighboring shepherds swore they'd seen no added travelers passing through. So stories turned inward to the old ones. Mirah's Hollow had been built on the edge of a marsh, and the marsh kept secrets. Old women at the market spoke of a curse, a debt unpaid to the river spirits, they said, and a payment collected at midnight. People who grew up on stories remember that folklore is not always false. Sometimes it is a different kind of truth. They told of lights under the water that lured foxes and children, of trees that whispered names at night. Yet none of these explanations fit perfectly. Each theory left gaps the size of doors swinging wide. There were the eyewitnesses who rose to speak of the last night. A woodcutter from the hill claimed he saw a pale fog roll through the lanes like a hand sweeping a table clean. He heard a sound like many footsteps but softer, like pages turning, and then silence. A young shepherd returned from tending the flocks to find his gate open and his sheep calm, unfrightened, as if it had been ordinary. An old teacher, when asked, would only clasp his hands and repeat one thing: the bell. It never tolls itself. It never calls without someone pulling the rope. They argued that at 3 a.m, the village bell had rang once, a single peal that was not funeral nor festal, but something between, a punctuation that snapped the world shut. If you like rational endings, one think tank of scholars arrived with instruments and charts. They mapped ley lines, seismic data, anything that could turn extraordinary into measurable. They found a slight anomaly in magnetic readings over the hollow, a chord of misbehavior in the Earth's field. But the anomaly explained little. Machines do not account for the feeling people carry afterward, that the place had been excised with intention, like a page torn and tossed into a fire that vanishes without ash. Then the stories darkened into something older: human hunger for closure. Families of the missing demanded answers. Priests performed rites by empty cottages, sprinkling sing-said herbs and reciting names into the dawn. A child's lullaby was sung to a doorway. People left little offerings at the boundary: bread, combs, coins, for whatever had taken their kin. Months became years, and the spot where Mirah's hollow had been became a hollow in truth, a depression in the land that refused to host more than low grass. Travelers sometimes still stopped at sunset and said they felt a presence like someone watching them from a porch that had no house. I saved the strangest for last, because the best horrors aren't explained away. They invite you to look. Years after the first disappearance, a plowman from a distant valley found, in a furrow of untouched soil beside the hollow, a single object half buried: a child's wooden horse, worn smooth at the mane. He dug until his hands were raw and drew it free. When he set it on his cart, the horse's carved eye seemed to look back at the world with a patience that was older than iron. That night, the plowman's wife woke to the sound of distant laughter, and they both swore they heard the faintest ring of a bell from nowhere. Some say Mirah's hollow was taken by the river, or by men from beyond the mountains, or by a god tired of being ignored. Others think it folded into itself, and now occupies that thin place between then and now, a village repeating its last breath on a loop where nothing can leave and nothing new may enter. And maybe that is the real terror, that a place can be preserved in its last moment, trapped like an insect in amber, forever unchanged, forever alone. If you ever travel down a crooked lane and feel the road grow quiet in a way that is not natural, listen for a bell that shouldn't be ringing. Imagine for a moment stepping into a square where life has stopped, the stew still warm on the table, the child's horse waiting for hands that never return. The world is full of things that erase themselves to remain hidden. Mirah's hollow is one of them. So what happened? I don't know. And that is the part that keeps this story walking in your head at night. The absolute clean absence of an answer. We are left with impressions, small artifacts, and the knowledge that sometimes the earth keeps a secret so complete it refuses to be translated. They say curious people find answers, but some answers, when found, refuse to let us go. If you liked this tale of the vanished village, Subscribe for more mysteries that pull at the thin places between ordinary and impossible. And next time you hear a bell where no bell should be, don't assume it's an accident. Sometimes, the silence after it is the beginning of a different story.